This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
The time is precisely 1:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Danushka Madhavala and read by Chandima Veerakon. Headlines. The Premier assures potential Turkish investors that new visa and BOI regulations will ease business in Sri Lanka. New Zealand extends its fullest support to overcome the present economic crisis faced by Sri Lanka. The Foreign Employment Bureau says that more than 200,000 Sri Lankans have left the country for foreign employment up to date this year. Secretary-General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union to arrive in Sri Lanka today. The RDA says stern actions will be taken against any illegal construction in the country. Crowds expected to line route as Queen's coffin moves to Edinburgh. Sri Lankan cricket and netball teams will face the Asia Cup finals today. Those are the headlines, and now we take a look at the local news in detail. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena has assured the newly introduced relaxed visa regulations and investment facilitation schemes of Board of Investment will help to attract more Turkish investors to Sri Lanka. He said this when Ambassador of Turkey Rakibe Demet called on him at the Prime Minister's office on Friday and informed him about difficulties faced by some of the Turkish businessmen in obtaining long-term residential visas. Ms. Demet thanked the Prime Minister and said this assurance would help her embassy's efforts to promote Turkish investment in Sri Lanka. The Prime Minister said Turkey had the opportunities now to invest in new sectors such as production of agricultural machinery, medicine, pharmaceuticals and medical equipment, and renewable energy and fisheries sectors. The Turkish ambassador said her country has already provided a stock of medicine and surgical equipment for the health sector last month, and 2 more consignments of medicine will arrive in Sri Lanka next week. The Prime Minister thanked Turkey for the support and assistance provided to Sri Lanka under the renewed assistance programs of the Turkey Development and Cooperation Agency for development work, as well as to help early recovery from current economic problems. They also discussed the plans for tourism promotion and expand Turkish Airlines Ankara, Colombo, Male flights. New Zealand extends its fullest support to overcome the present economic crisis faced by Sri Lanka. This was revealed at a meeting held between High Commissioner of New Zealand and Minister Prasanna Ranatunga. The Sri Lankan minister said that support of the New Zealand is expected to develop the tourism sector in Sri Lanka. The minister requested the High Commissioner to promote Sri Lanka as a popular tourist destination among New Zealanders. The New Zealand High Commissioner expressed his willingness to support overcome the present economic crisis in Sri Lanka. The Foreign Employment Bureau says that more than 200,000 Sri Lankans have left the country for foreign employment up to date this year. The government is expected to send another 100,000 individuals for foreign employment during this year. The CEB says that the foreign remittances are also increasing at present. When compared to month of July, 16% more remittances have arrived to the country through interbank transactions. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
People's Bank Online Corporate Banking. Imagine business anywhere.
Continuing with the local stories, Martin Shongong, Secretary-General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, is due to visit Sri Lanka today on an invitation extended by the President, Ranil Wickremesinghe. Secretary-General of the Parliament of Sri Lanka, Dhammika Dasanayake, said that the visit of the Secretary-General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union has been organised according to an invitation made by President Ranil Wickremesinghe when he was the Prime Minister. Secretary-General Martin Shongong will be received by Angajan Ramanathan, the Deputy Committee Chairman of the Parliament, and Dhammika Dasanayake, the Secretary-General of the Parliament, at Katunayake Bandaranayake International Airport. During this official visit, the Secretary-General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union will meet with the President Ranil Wickremesinghe and the Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena and hold discussions. Director General of the Road Development Authority, LVS Veerakon, says that stern actions be taken against any illegal construction in the country. Many disturbances have been reported to the drainage lines and road network due to the illegal constructions. Many areas have been inundated due to the blocking of drainage network. Several deaths have been also reported. He also said that the local government institutions should also look into this matter. To conclude the local news, the headlines again. The Premier assures potential Turkish investors that new visa and BOI regulations will ease business in Sri Lanka. New Zealand extends its fullest support to overcome the present economic crisis faced by Sri Lanka. The Foreign Employment Bureau says that more than 200,000 Sri Lankans have left the country for foreign employment up to date this year. Secretary-General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union to arrive in Sri Lanka today. The RDA says stern actions be taken against any illegal construction in the country. That ends local news.
Imagine if you could maintain a firm hold of your operations from anywhere. People's Bank Online Corporate Banking. Imagine business anywhere.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And on the main news story, USAID Administrator Samantha Power will conclude her visit to Sri Lanka today. The administrator met government officials, private sector representatives, farmers and other Sri Lankans most impacted by the complex emergency to discuss how their lives have been affected and how the United States can best support them as they rebuild and recover. She also met leaders representing various political parties to learn their views on how to address the economic and political crisis in Sri Lanka. During her trip, the administrator highlighted the United States' enduring support for the people of Sri Lanka and discussed issues related to food security, fuel and essential item shortages, economic stability, and the impact of Russia's war against Ukraine on the region. Administrator Power's visit underscored the United States' commitment to address the urgent and intermediate needs facing Sri Lankans and to support a return to stability, the USAID media release stated. The administrator also reinforced USAID's support for inclusive development that promotes human rights, democracy, and good governance. She reiterated the United States' steadfast support for a free and open Indo-Pacific region that is connected, prosperous, resilient, and secure. That ends the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to Watchlight. Cabinet approval has been received to grant no pay leave for public servants who have qualified for pensions to work in the private sector. A committee of intellectuals have been appointed to present recommendations to the government to grant no pay leave for a maximum of 5 years without affecting their seniority. The recommendations of the committee presented by Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena as the Minister of Public Administration, Internal Affairs, Provincial Councils and Local Government has received Cabinet approval for its implementation. That ends Watchlight. And now taking a look at the world news, the headlines. Crowds expected to line route as Queen's coffin moves to Edinburgh. Afghan girls take to streets to protest school closure in Paktia. Scientists discover how air pollution causes lung cancer. The Queen's coffin will make the 6-hour journey from Balmoral to Edinburgh later. Thousands of people are expected to line the route as the late monarch's body is driven to the palace of Holyrood's house. Tributes continue to pour in after Charles III was proclaimed king at an elaborate ceremony in London yesterday. The Queen's funeral will be held in London's Westminster Abbey on Monday, the 19th of this month. Princes William and Harry were joined by Catherine and Meghan at Windsor as they waved the tributes to the Queen and spent time talking to the crowd. Thousands of people had gathered throughout the day outside the castle before the four arrived. Amanda Goldsmith was one of many who had come to Windsor to lay flowers, where she met the new Prince and Princess of Wales. Dozens of girls have protested in Afghanistan's Paktia province after Taliban authorities shut their schools just days after classes resumed, as an estimated 3 million secondary school girls are shut out of school for more than a year now. The Taliban has gone back on its promise to allow women's education and job opportunities and has since imposed curbs on women's rights, bringing back memories of its first stint in power between 1996 and 2001, during which women's education was banned and women were banished from public life. Scientists say they have identified the mechanism through which air pollution triggers lung cancer in non-smokers, a discovery one expert hailed as an important step for science and for society. The research illustrated the health risk posed by the tiny particles produced by burning fossil fuels, sparking calls for more urgent action to combat climate change. It could also pave the way for a new field of cancer prevention, according to Charles Swanton of the United Kingdom's Francis Crick Institute. Swanton presented the research, which has not yet been published in a peer-reviewed journal, at the European Society for Medical Oncology's annual conference in Paris yesterday. Air pollution has long been thought to be linked to a higher risk of lung cancer in people who have never smoked. They found that exposure to tiny PM2.5 pollution particles, which are less than 2.5 micrometers across, led to an increased risk of mutations in the epidermal growth factor receptor gene. To end the world news, the headlines again. Crowds expected to line route as Queen's coffin moves to Edinburgh. Afghan girls take to streets to protest school closure in Paktia. Scientists discover how air pollution causes lung cancer. That ends the world news. Over to the development news. Minister Manushanana Kara says that the government expects to increase the Korean job quota for Sri Lanka next year. Discussions in this regard are taking place at present. Korea has agreed to provide 1,047 jobs to Sri Lankans in Korea's fisheries industry this year. According to the statement, this assurance was made after Sri Lanka's Minister of Labour and Foreign Employment, Manushanana Kara, met Korean officials at the newly opened facility of the Korean Human Resources Development Department. A Korean language expertise test for said jobs in the fisheries sector is scheduled to be held in October. Workers who appear for the test will also be given the opportunity to appear in another field next year. That ends the development news.
Sports News is brought to you by...
With many values that bind us beyond the transaction, we are Sampath Bank. We present your future.
And on sports news, it's cricket, netball and soccer. In cricket news, the final match of the Asia Cup will be played today at Sharjah between Sri Lanka and Pakistan. The match will begin at 7:30 p.m. Sri Lanka time. And on netball news, the final match of the Asia Cup Netball Tournament will also be held today. The tournament is being held in Singapore. Sri Lanka will meet Singapore at the finals. The match will commence in a short while. Sri Lanka qualified for the finals of the 2022 Asian Netball Championships after defeating Hong Kong yesterday. The team came out on top of the semi-final clash against Hong Kong after defeating them by 67-43. The championships, in which 11 teams took part, also serve as qualifiers for the 2023 Netball World Cup, which is due to be held in Cape Town, South Africa. And in soccer, Barcelona's La Liga game at Cadiz was halted for about 50 minutes because a fan had a medical emergency. The visitors were leading 2-0 with fewer than 10 minutes remaining when the incident happened. Cadiz goalkeeper Jeremias Ledesma ran across the pitch with a medical kit and threw it into the stands before the players were taken off. That ends sports news.
The fastest way to earn the highest interest from NSB, now extended till the 30th of September just for you. Your short-term deposits receive an attractive interest rate of 20% in 3 months and 22% in 7 months. Visit a bank branch or a main postal office today. NSB, the only bank with 100% government guarantee.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
And on business news, Emirates invests over $350 million in next generation in-flight entertainment system for new A350 fleet. As part of its continued drive to ensure customers fly better, Emirates has selected the new Thales Avant Up system for its incoming fleet of Airbus A350 aircraft scheduled for delivery in 2024. The airline's investment will see its 50-strong fleet of A350s equipped with next-generation in-flight entertainment solutions that offer a memorable, cinematic and personalized passenger experience. That ends business news.
Business News, sponsored by
The fastest way to earn the highest interest from NSB, now extended till the 30th of September just for you. Your short-term deposits receive an attractive interest rate of 20% in 3 months and 22% in 7 months. Visit a bank branch or a main postal office today. NSB, the only bank with 100% government guarantee.
And finally, we take a look at the weather report. The Met Department says that a few showers will occur in the western and Sabaragamu provinces and in the Kandy, Nura Elia, Gaul and Matra districts. Mainly fair weather will prevail elsewhere over the island. Strong winds about 50 kilometers per hour can be expected at times over the western slopes of the Central Hills, northern and north central provinces and in Trincomalee district. That ends the weather report. And to conclude this bulletin of news, the headlines again. The Premier assures potential Turkish investors that new visa and BOI regulations will ease business in Sri Lanka. New Zealand extends its fullest support to overcome the present economic crisis faced by Sri Lanka. The Foreign Employment Bureau says that more than 200,000 Sri Lankans have left the country for foreign employment up to date this year. Secretary-General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union to arrive in Sri Lanka today. The RDA says stern actions will be taken against any illegal construction in the country. Crowds expected to line route as Queen's coffin moves to Edinburgh. Sri Lankan cricket and netball teams will face the Asia Cup finals today. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.